memorials, samadhis, and pyramids. Building memorials for people who are dear to us or those who were of certain significance or prominence after their death is common in all cultures of the world. The famous Taj Mahal of India, for example, is a memorial built by a king in memory of one of his wives. This is also one way of handling one's grief. These memorials also have social and political significance where they help in building our identities. However, beyond these reasons, is there any need or existential significance to it? That depends upon many factors. Once it happened, a 5-year-old boy accompanied his mother to the cemetery. He had never been to a cemetery in his life. While his mother was paying her respects at one particular grave, the boy went about everywhere reading all the inscriptions on the tombstones. He then came back to his mother and asked her, "Mom, where do they bury all the horrible people?" Every tombstone declared this was the most wonderful man, so he wanted to know where the horrible ones were buried. Generally, people want to have good memories of people who have died, so their memorials also say good things about them. But in India, people created another kind of memorials called Samadhis. There is some spiritual significance to such Samadhis, and people go to a Samadhi not just to remember the dead or pay their respects, but also to be in its presence and meditate. In India, if someone died in a certain way, people recognized that there was a benefit in preserving that place and wanted to make the energies they left behind available to people. For example, there is Vijay's Samadhi at the yoga center. If you simply sit there, you will see that the Samadhi has its own aura and energy about itself because of the way in which she left her body. It is like a solvent. It is a kind of dissolving energy. Generally, for certain people, I tell them not to sit there for too long because it is a very body taking kind of energy. It can slowly dissolve you. It was set up with the intention that there is one corner in the yoga center which nurtures a very different type of energy altogether. It is mild and subtle. It is also very beautiful and pleasant. If you simply sit there without aspiring for anything or relating to anything or trying to imagine things, it can give you a bodiless kind of feeling. For one who is doing sadhana, it is good to be in such spaces. That space is fundamentally of the Anahata Chakra. A lot of people go there probably out of curiosity, but if you look at people who go there regularly, they are a certain type of people. They are Anahata oriented people who are naturally drawn to that. They prefer to sit in the Samadhi rather than in the Dhyana Linga simply because they are of a certain type. There are many places like that in India. One such place is Kumara Parvatam near the Kukke Subramanya temple in the Western Ghats, Karnataka. It is believed that Shiva's younger son Kartikeya or Subramanya, as he is known outside Tamil Nadu, left his body on top of this mountain. He was a fierce warrior yogi who unleashed destruction wherever he perceived injustice. It is said that one day he realized the futility of his deeds and decided to put an end to it. He washed his bloodied sword one last time in the river at the foothills of Kumara Parvata and climbed the hill. He never came down. They say he shed his body at the top of the mountain. It is said that he was such an accomplished yogi that he shed his body in the standing position. His energies are very much intact there even today. About 20 years ago, we went there with a group of residents from the yoga center. Halfway up the mountain, there is a house that belongs to two brothers who live there. People going up the mountain usually camp there on their way up and down. Once we reached that place, I knew I would not be able to make it to the top. The energies there were so intense that I knew my body would not be able to withstand this sort of energy during that phase of my life. That entire night, I could not lie down and sleep. Every time I tried to sit or lie down, my body would just spring up. I was in a tent and my body would stand erect, dismantling the tent itself. So I ended up standing the whole night. Another such experience happened when I was in a small village in Tamil Nadu called Belayutha Palayam. I was conducting a program there and stayed in a home opposite a small hill. In Tamil Nadu, there is bound to be a temple on top of every hill. Very few hilltops are unoccupied. So there was a temple on top of this hill too. And every day I would see people going up and coming down. I went to this village a few times, but I never went up that hill. Then they told me there was a cave up there and some Jain monks had stayed there some 2400 years ago, and that a local king had beds carved for them on the rock. I thought about this. 2400 years ago meant they could be direct disciples of Mahavir or just after that. So now I was interested. One day I went up the hill. It was like a bird's nest, precariously positioned on top of the hill in the midst of some big boulders. The place was not well kept. It was being used for all kinds of things. There were empty alcohol bottles and things like that. The walls were all defaced by those ugly love proclamations you commonly find in India. PKT loves SKP and rubbish like that. In a corner, I saw the carved beds on the rock. There were small 2-inch protrusions for pillows too. I just sat on one of these beds and my body was literally jumping up and down. I said, "This is a loaded place. Clean it up and we will come and sleep here in the night." That night, about 9 of us went up with mattresses to sleep in that cave. No one slept for a moment because the energy was bursting there in strange ways. And I could clearly see that the person who used to lie on the bed that I happened to sleep upon had no legs before his left knee. What had happened, we don't know, but there was no left leg. They must have been that kind of intense people that their energies were distinctly bouncing there even after over 2000 years. There are many more such places in India. Some are maintained with some reverence, but most are anonymous and unkempt. If you want to experience such an energy on a much larger scale, more multidimensional, you must go up to the 7th hill of the Veliangiri mountains. Sadguru Sri Brahma left his body there through all the 7 chakras. So the place is explosive in terms of energy even today. It is something one must experience. It is a tremendous dimension and possibility. However, for people who led an ordinary life and died, if you want to remember and honor them, that is up to you. But you must know it is a lot of real estate. It is a certain emotion and you are making an investment of your emotion. It may not have any existential significance. Take the Taj Mahal for example. At least Shah Jahan built something beautiful. Is it reverberating with the energy of his wife Mumtaz? Nothing like that. It is a beautiful piece of craft that he built. It is a jewel. No one goes there to grieve for her. People just go there to enjoy the craft. Her name may be written somewhere, but existentially, the monument has got nothing to do with him or her right now. It has got something to do with the people who worked on it, though. Ancient Egyptians took this whole memorial business to another level altogether. The pyramids of Egypt are perhaps physically the largest and most spectacular attempt ever at connecting the here with the hereafter. A tremendous amount of thought, engineering, and effort has gone into building them. In terms of physicality, perhaps no other human effort to ensure the well being of the dead is so desperate. So, what would be the spiritual value of these pyramids? How far do they go in ensuring the well being of the departed? Is this effort worthy of emulation in the present times? Egyptians started building pyramids because they were very death oriented. It comes from their obsession with pleasure. Death and pleasure are very directly connected. People always think life and pleasure are connected. No, death and pleasure are very directly connected. Pyramids are just one aspect of what they built. They built some very fabulous temples also, but the pyramids have become very popular because of some modern death oriented people who wrote books on them. Basic quality of the pyramid is preservation. Some people are promoting the pyramid as a meditative process. A pyramid has nothing to do with meditation. Sitting inside a pyramid and meditating is just ignorance. If you are doing it for a health purpose, it is okay. It definitely supports health. But if people think that sitting inside a pyramid and meditating will take them to higher levels of consciousness, it is a very wrong notion. With the pyramid, you can create health, organic unity, and maybe you can increase your lifespan to some extent, but it is not a spiritual process. It does not help the dead in any way except assisting in the preservation of the physical. Pyramids work because of their geometry. Even if you make a paper pyramid whose angles are exactly 51.5 degrees on all the four sides and on the top, it will work. You can place a vegetable inside it and you will see that what would normally rot in about 3 days will still not have rotted even after 3 weeks. It would have shrunk, shriveled out, but not rotted. This is because if you create a pyramidal form, Vyana Vayu gets trapped there naturally. Vyana Vayu is in charge of the preservative function of the body. So something can be preserved for a long time if you can hold it. This is how mummies were preserved for thousands of years. In India, preserving the dead body is the last thing we want to do. The rule is if someone dies within 4 to 6 hours after death, you must cremate the body. Traditionally, they said once death has occurred, by the next dusk or dawn, whichever occurs first, the body must be cremated. Destroying the body immediately is very good for both the dead and the living. Preserving the body is only a torture for the person who has departed